actually interact or have chats with the panelists. But if you have questions, feel free to jot those in the chat room and I will monitor that. Now, I'm not one who's big on spending a lot of time on introductions. I want to use this time to hear from our speakers. But I want to introduce to you first off, Dr. Joseph Cooper, who is the inaugural, Dr. J. Keith Motley, Endowed Chair of Sport Leadership and Administration at the University of Massachusetts at Boston. He is also a Tar Heel. He is a graduate of the Exercise and Sports Science Sport Administration Master's Degree Program. Dr. Kevin Eleka. He is an analytical chemist at Bristol Myers Squibb. And I'm sure many of you have looked at his article, very thought-provoking article called White Coats, Black Scientists. Dr. Robert Smith. He is the Associate Chair of Administration for UNC's Department of Neurology. He is also a Wahoo. We have a connection, both being alums of the University of Virginia. Dr. Robert Turner. He is my partner in many, many spaces, but in particular, our work around mental health of athletes. He is the assistant professor in the Department of Clinical Research and Leadership at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Science. He also has an amazing book that everybody should check out called Not for Long, The Life and Career of the NFL Athlete. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. And so we're going to get started. We're going to jump right in and talk about educational pursuits. Less than 2% of Americans over the age of 25 have a PhD. So we are in rare air. And less than 6% of full-time faculty members at institutions across the country are Black. So I want to ask each one of you, what was your inspiration to go after your terminal degree, your PhD? And I will start off with Dr. Cooper. What was your inspiration?
Well, thank you, Dr. Stroman. With this question, it connects to you, as you know. For those who don't know, Dr. Stroman was a professor in the Exercise Sports Science Department and Sport Administration program at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill when I was doing my master's program. To put it in a more concise manner, after my athletic career concluded, I was a former basketball player who grew up in North Carolina. I experienced what many former athletes experience, which was a post-athletic career identity crisis. Really did not realize how I was investing in other aspects of my development growing up. Grew up in a very educationally centric household on both my mother's side and my father's side. But being a young Black male, I was very influenced by sport. So when I went to do my master's degree, at that time, I wanted to be an athletic director. There weren't very many athletic directors. And in the program, we had to do a master's thesis. And I went to Dr. Stroman's office and I gave her an idea about doing an economic impact study of baseball, the baseball team being relocated for that season. They were doing renovations on the on-campus stadium. And Dr. Stroman looked me in the eye and said, you're not going to do that topic. Next week, come back to my office with the topic that you're passionate about. And I came back that next week and said, I want to do a study looking at the critical success factors impacting Black male student athletes' holistic development at a Division I predominantly white institution. And from that point forward, she exposed me to other Black faculty members who were in sport, doing research in sport, and in conversations with my family, I really found out that I should go down this path. So that is why I ended up pursuing my PhD.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for that acknowledgement. Kevin, Dr. Eleka, what was your inspiration?
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Stroman. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be on this panel with the other panelists, and I'm excited for this conversation. So my inspiration to pursue my PhD was, it just came out of a conversation I had with one of my chemistry TAs. She just told me that I can do it. In my family and neighborhood I grew up in, I didn't know what a Black scientist looked like, right? So I'm African, I'm from the Congo. You could probably see my flag right there. So growing up, there's only two things, right? Be a doctor or a lawyer, right? And I didn't want to be a lawyer, and I not really want to be a doctor. So what can I do? I always liked the sciences, biology, and chemistry. But it wasn't until maybe my sophomore and junior year of my undergraduate studies where I just had professors who said, "Listen, take this summer internship, go somewhere, do some research, see what it feels like to be a graduate student." So they sent me to University of Wyoming in Laramie, very remote area. I grew up in New York City, so it was very different. But the 10 weeks there really taught me, how to think about science in a way that I never thought of it before, and it just opened a whole new world for me. So I came back my senior year and I said, you know what, I think I could do it. I think I could be a scientist. I think I could go get a PhD. And that's what brought me to the University of Michigan, where I did my PhD in chemistry.
Well, I know that was culture shock going from New York to Wyoming.
Right.
And you came through. You look good. You look good. Dr. Smith, Robert, please share.
Thank you, Dr. Stroman. It is an honor to be here. It truly is. The impetus for my pursuing my PhD stems from my time as a clinician at the University of Virginia. I am a triple Wahoo. I did all my work there, but I was working in preoperative services, managing a department there where I interacted with surgeons with great frequency, and that I just couldn't get their attention. They felt that the department that I was managing was doing it all wrong. And so I went to one of my professors in the Curry School, Mike Caldwell, and I said, these guys don't listen to me. And he said, "You're in the land of white coats. You need a PhD." And so I started down that path. And I would say to you, they didn't listen to me after the PhD as well. But anyway, so that was part of the impetus of it. But in all seriousness, I think my mom was probably the biggest driver in that, because she called me doc at a young age, and just a profound influence on my life. And she always told me that you can be anything you want to be if you apply yourself to it. So that's probably the true genesis of why I pursued it, because I just felt like I wanted to see how far I could go in that regard. So, yeah.
Well, that's really, really powerful, thinking about how we speak into our children and what the words have meaning, and children hold on to that. Thank you for lifting that up. Dr. Turner, Robert, your inspiration.
It's similar to Dr. Cooper's in a way. As you know, I played professional football for a couple of years after attending James Madison University, and then I had this really tough time in my transition to life after sports, and I called those my wilderness years. I was kind of like the children of Israel, kind of just out there not knowing what I was doing in life, and through a series of events, I wound up moving back from, at that time, I was living in Los Angeles, and through Dallas, and then moved to New York City. And I knew that I needed to go back, or wanted to go back, to get a degree in something. And I just had no idea. And one day a friend said, "You're always talking about race. You should go study that." Because I had, was really influenced by Cornel West's Race Matters book. And I said to her, I said, "You can actually study race in school?" And she said, "Yeah, it's called sociology." And at that time, I had never heard of the word sociology, knew nothing about it, knew nothing about getting a PhD. This was all absolutely foreign. So I went to the Barnes and Nobles in New York City and Union Square, and I got a little book on sociology. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do this. I'll get a master's degree. And then I went online and started reading about it. And they said, you can do absolutely nothing with a master's degree in sociology. So I just made the decision. I said, all right, well, I'll get a PhD. And that is completely one of those decisions where ignorance is completely bliss, because I didn't know it was going to take the next 8 years of my life to pursue. But it was, one of the best things that I've ever done, and really helped me find my identity, my voice, and a passion and a purpose well beyond football. So it was a really a good thing for me to struggle through that, but really happy I was pointed in that direction.
What's interesting is the way you all spoke and the way you said it. Like, oh yeah, I just went and got my PhD. But I'm sure, we could go on for hours about the challenges and the sacrifice because it requires a lot of discipline, but it's definitely worth it for sure. Now, there's a glaring lack of Black doctoral students due to a non-existent or broken pipeline, but pipeline problems don't necessarily account for the number of Black college graduates who don't pursue or are dissuaded from higher degrees because of how these programs treat Black people. Systemic barriers are real. And so I want to ask you, what was your experience, attaining your degree? Who or what made a difference for you in the completion of your advanced degrees, master's or doctorate? So I'll start off. Let's go with Dr. Leka.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did my PhD at the University of Michigan, and when I was there, I was the only Black person in my cohort. Since then, it's become more diverse, but I would say I can count on one hand how many Black people were getting their PhD in chemistry at the time. There was not a lot of Black faculty, so I needed to find a way to get support outside of my academics. So I did that through friends. I played a lot of sports in the YMCA, so I found my tribe, because I knew that the work was going to be challenging, and I knew that there was no one in the department that looked like me that I can really emulate, so to speak. So I say that to say, if there's anybody on this call pursuing a PhD, I would say go find your tribe, because it's really, really important, because you need that support. 5, 6, 7, 8 years, getting a PhD is tough. We're probably going to talk about the sacrifices you make. You're probably away from your family, away from your friends, away from your hometown. So definitely finding a way to, do something else that will keep you sane.
Thank you. Dr. Turner.
Well, first of all, it's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it. When you're going through a journey, sometimes you don't actually realize all of the people who have helped lift you up during that journey. And so there's just a number of people. One, I was fortunate, made the great decision to attend the Graduate Center in New York City, part of City University of New York. There happened to be an African-American faculty member there, Juan Battle, who said, hey, listen, my mission here, the reason I took this position is to make sure that people of color get through this. We need to get you into the program. We need to get you through the program and set you up to do amazing things, to produce knowledge through here. So he was great. My advisor, Stanley Aronowitz, was wonderful, helped carry me through. He was a big sports fan, so that kind of helped. But I think the one person, because there was many times that I wanted to quit. Mine was a little different, where I was working full-time during the day and taking classes at night full-time as a PhD student. I don't know what I was thinking about trying to do both full-time together. But there were so many days where I thought, why am I doing this? I don't want to be a professor. I don't want to be an academician when I get done. What's going on? But I remember so many times in my ears, my aunts used to tell me all the time, they say, you are Ruth Turner's grandson, and you can do whatever you want. We do not believe in quitting. You do not fail in this family. And that was enough, always that small voice, and sometimes it was a loud voice, but that made me say, you know what, if I started it, then I can do it. I can finish.
Love that discipline. And again, family assistance. Dr. Smith.
Well, the impetus for me was, as Dr. Turner spoke, and there's a lot of people that sort of influenced my decision and academic pursuits. But the one thing that drove me, and it was sort of, I don't know how to characterize this, but a sort of a negative incentivizer, if you will, was that I didn't see a lot of people of color with PhDs. And I said, I know we can do this. I mean, where's the birthplace of civilization, science? That's in our genes, right? And so that, along with some really good mentors, sort of spurred me on. And I'm sure, like the most of us here, I really appreciate those people who had PhDs that were willing to offer me tidbits of wisdom and help me along the way. There's so many people I won't name. I'll certainly miss someone, but Bob Covert was at the Curry School of Education. That was extremely influential. Jim McGowan, certainly my mom, as I said before. Those people just really, and my wife, of course. I'll share this kind of funny story. When I told my wife, of course, because I had 2 young kids and was working full time during this process. And I said, I think I want to go back and get my PhD. I think I really want to do this. And so at the dinner party, she said, oh, Robert's going to get his PhD. So I'm like, I'm committed now, right? I can't stop. So that was one of the things that kept me driving forward. But again, that's just one of a lot of people that look like me in this area. And I wanted to show those who I wanted to be able in the position where I could reach back and pick people up and say, hey, I did it, you can do it. I'm Irma Smith's boy from Pulaski, Virginia. If I can do this, you can do this. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dr. Cooper.
Yeah, my story just kind of echoes what all of my colleagues have mentioned. I grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina, and my mother was an educator at Bennett College, one of two historically Black women's colleges in the United States. And my educational journey started at North Carolina A&T, which is another HBCU in Greensboro. And so growing up, my parents were very intentional about surrounding my brother and I with role models who were in a range of areas. So I didn't realize it till later, similar to what Dr. Turner was alluding to earlier, that I had a village that was pouring into me and that was preparing me for my greatness to manifest later, but I didn't realize it until after my athletic career concluded. A lot of times when you grow up in a community and it's the norm, you really don't recognize how much you have until you get older and you start seeing different places. Oh, everybody didn't. I had friends who said, oh, I don't know anybody who's a doctor. I'm like, well, my mom earned her PhD while I was in middle school going to high school. And my father earned his, doctorate before I was born. So, I didn't realize how much of a benefit I gained from that. So I had a sense of self there, but also when I was going through my undergraduate, master's, and PhD, I just had so many professors who were Black and who were of different races who did exactly what Dr. Elielke mentioned earlier, just a little comment, just saying, hey, you can do this, or I see you. And for Black males specifically, because of our somewhat invisibility in terms of our full humanity in society, when someone tells us that they believe in us or they can see us, it has a profound impact. And I could name off a whole litany of people, but at every level, I had people who just did little gestures that really ignited something in me. And then once I saw other Black faculty members who studied sport doing it, similar to what I saw in basketball. When I was watching Michael Jordan growing up, I was like, oh, if he could do it, I could do it. Now, obviously, I can't do what he could do on the court, but there's something about connecting individuals, whether it be through media, through print reading, through personal networks, it ignites that it is possible. And I think we all talk about that when President Obama was elected, that impact. In the recent election of Vice President Kamala Harris, like that, it is possible. Once you open that up, then the possibilities are endless.
Well, you brought up HBCUs, and I want to mention that there is another consideration in all of this, in having more Black doctoral students. We're talking about lack of support. Among Black STEM PhD holders, more than a third earn their undergraduate degrees at HBCUs, according to the American Institutes for Research. So anyone, open up your mics. If you'd like to comment in terms of your connections with a HBCU in the past or even currently, the role HBCUs have played in your life, if any.
I'll just start off just echoing. So my earliest educational experiences began at North Carolina A&T. My mother would take me to her classes where she was teaching at Bennett College. Several of her students were our babysitters. I remember going to the A&T homecomings. A&T is recognized, many people recognize it as the birthplace of the college sit-in movement, where the 4 African-American males sat at the Woolworths counter. So I grew up around that ethos of Black excellence, Black resistance. Although I did not go to an HBCU, my brother went to North Carolina Central, which is in Durham, North Carolina, right down the road. So I was frequently at NCCU, and all of my friends who went to HBCUs, all of them just said they benefited from being around faculty members, peers from diverse backgrounds across the African diaspora, that expose them to positive identity affirmation. A lot of times when we go to historically white institutions, we may be one of the few in our classes. We may not even have a faculty member who looks like us. So that's a different type of battle that you're fighting. I think there's a different level of preparation that's developed. But that early experience related to my subsequent doctoral work where I study athletic programs at historically Black colleges and universities, and I still do that to this day.
Thank you.
I'll jump in.
Oh, go, please,
No,
Dr. Turner.
I'll jump in a little bit as well. I did not attend an HBCU. As I mentioned, I went to James Madison University. My sister, on the other hand, is a two-time degree holder from Virginia State, and very proud of that. And she's doing amazing. But one of the things I do want to just jump in on here is that I went to college, and my decisions to go to college where I attended was based on the schools that recruited me and offered a football scholarship. And I was not contacted by any HBCUs. And as a matter of fact, at the time, I probably would not have considered it because it had the stigma that my goal was to play professional football, and I had an opportunity to go to Penn State and some other larger schools. I went to JMU because they said, hey, listen, kind of as Dr. Cooper said, he said, there's a lot of places that want you, but we need you. And they put me on the field right away. So that was, and it wound up being a great decision for me. But at that time, HBCUs had a stigma that if you wanted to play sports, it was your last option. It was not the first option to go to. I'm glad to see that today there are some 4-star, 5-star athletes that have said, you know what, HBCUs are on my radar. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there's a basketball player decided to go to Howard, right? So, and then there's another top-rated quarterback that decided to go to an HBCU from out of New York City or New York State. So what I would say about that is that I'm really happy to see that some people are starting to recognize that there's a great value in the contributions that HBCUs can make, and that you're not limiting yourself as an athlete or as anyone who wants to get a valued higher education, level of higher education. And I'm happy that we're starting to wake up to that realization.
Well, thank you for that. I know I can speak for many, many Black students who attend historically white colleges and creating that HBCU experience at the white school. Because, to your point, Dr. Lecca, about having a tribe, and so much of this work, whether you're undergrad or advanced degree, is about finding your culture, because the demands of academia are so strong that we have to lean on our ethnicity and our culture and the beauty of that. I want to ask you about imposter syndrome, because oftentimes we are the only one in the room, the only one in the conference, the only one on the committee, and showing up with confidence and with courage and with boldness, and knowing that you are, if not the brightest one in the room, you are certainly on par with everyone there. So any words of advice or recommendations that you give to people who are learning right now in their advanced programs, their advanced degrees, and making sure that they realize that they belong? Dr. Smith?
Yeah. Dr. Stroman, that's one of the things I've found throughout my career, that I've always been one of few or the only African-American male that's in the room in a number of settings. And so one of the things that I would share with any young person coming up, that is, first and foremost, believe in yourself. And secondly, always be prepared. And thirdly, as I wouldn't characterize this way until now, what you've spoken to the panelists is talk about have a tribe. I would characterize as have a support system around you that you can lean on. Have that 2 a.m. person that you can call at 2 a.m. that he or she is going to pick up the phone. They're going to hear what you have to say. But never doubt yourself, and just be prepared, and know that you are as smart and as bright as anyone in the room, and perhaps smarter and brighter than those there. And that just for the sheer nature of your color, you may have to have done much more than they did. I did a pilot study in my master's program and interviewed a number of people who were in leadership positions within healthcare. And without question, without exception, the women told me that the degree opened the door for them, that their white male colleagues didn't have to do what they had to do. And then the men, African-American men, same thing. And so what I would say to you is that degrees may validate you in some respect, but you have it within you, and to keep the faith and maintain that self-assurance.
Thank you. Dr. Lecca, Dr. Cooper?
Yeah, so when I'm mentoring students at every level, high school, undergrad, graduate student, first thing I try to tell them is that, you know, imposter syndrome is very real. Don't let anybody tell you that it's something you're making up in your head. It's very real. So it's important for you to recognize it, for you to name what it is, and for you to know within yourself, as Dr. Smith is talking about, that, you know, you're capable. As you go more advanced in your studies, you become more and more the expert in the room. The more you study, the more you know more about that particular subject than anybody else does. So it's just coming, you know, it's just being present, coming with confidence, you know, walking into the room with your head held up really, really high. You know, we're comfortable in doing that in many other spaces, right? So why not in an academic space? And it's not an easy thing. You know, I'm early in my career, so it is definitely something that I'm still dealing with. I'm really happy for my first manager. I mean, he's also an African American male. One of my end of the year evaluations, he says, "Kevin, you should speak up more." And I didn't really quite understand exactly what he was saying, but he was basically instilling confidence in me. He says, "Listen, when the topic comes up, everyone in the room is looking for you to say something." So they won't tell me this, but him and I had a really good relation where he can tell me, you know, you should speak if they want to listen. They're not going to force you to speak, but they definitely want to hear from you.
I was just echoing Dr. Smith and Dr. Eletke said that there's just three things that I would say for anyone who may experience imposter syndrome. Really four things. One, as Dr. Eletke said, you're not alone. There's others who've come before you, others going through it at the same time, and others who will go through it after you. The second thing is just from a spiritual standpoint, the greatness that's been created in you, it will not be destroyed by any other human being, regardless of what race they are. That there is a greatness that's in you that's bigger than any other human being, and just focus on tapping into that and nourishing that dynamic of yourself. The third thing is, at least for me, just reading about the greatness of people from similar racial, cultural, and ethnic backgrounds. I mean, I just find it very hard to convince yourself that you can't do it when you have a proliferation of exposure to people who look like you, who have done great things throughout human history. So I would just say, just take time to research. I mean, people and see, wow, like these individuals, created the stoplight, created a cure for these viruses and built pyramids and did all these different things. At some point, it's going to have a ripple effect on you. And then the final thing is, just echoing what was already said, from a competitive standpoint, be so good at what you do that no matter who's in the room, they have to respect it. They may not like you, they may not agree with it, but you are so on top of it that they just have to say, well, this person knows their craft. I may not, like the way they present, I may not like the color of their skin, but just be so excellent at it that it really doesn't have any room for the imposter syndrome to exist.
Well, thank you for that. I like that you lifted up the history. And of course, this reminds me of humanities, and that we have to continue. If we're in science, if we're in quantitative work, that still humanities matters. History matters. Dr. Turner?
Yeah, I'd like to just add on, of course, obviously echo everything else everyone has said here, but I just add a few kind of practical things that I think is really, really important. And one, I think you have to have, if you're going to pursue anything, if you're trying to do anything in greatness, right, and challenge yourself, have very selective hearing. Because there's a lot of people who are going to tell you what you can't do. Right. And that can start wearing you down. You go and lay in bed at night. Oh, man, who am I? I'm a failure, all this other stuff. But there's a lot of people, that's what their job is to tell you all things you can't do. Start hanging out with those people who believe in you, who know what you can do. I mean, there are people who will tell you, like I had a professor once that tell me, he said, listen, you're not a very good writer, right? And he was focusing on all, he said, maybe, once you get your PhD, instead of becoming a professor, you ought to do X, Y, Z. And I thought to myself, I said, well, okay, maybe I do have some challenges in writing, but I can learn. I can figure out how to do this. So if I would have just stopped and focused on what he told me that what was my, where I was incomplete and I was short and where I fell short of the mark, if I stopped right there, it would have never allowed me to actually write the book that I wrote. It would never allow me to do all the other things. So I would just say, if anything else, just realize that, be careful what you listen to. If you're going to put yourself in a position, make sure you're sitting in the room with a whole bunch, or even if all you can do is find one person, or you got to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm a good person. I believe in myself, and find people who are going to lift you up. That's going to help carry you 80, 90% through this imposter syndrome battle that you might be struggling with.
One of our attendees asked about, being bold, being courageous, being brilliant brings about, as someone coined it, racial jealousy, or as the attendee said, envy. So how do you manage the envy that shows up? And especially, the way Black men have been portrayed, that you take up a lot of space, that people see you before they see anything or anyone. So how do you handle the jealousy and the envy what comes with being not only Black and confident, but you have a PhD? Dr. Turner?
Oh, wow. That we could probably spend a whole bunch of time on that. I think one of the most unfortunate things, and this is why everything that I believe that people have said up to this point is so important, because you got to remember there's a lot that has been invested in you. There, from before you were born, people were speaking life and truth and all of these other things inside of you. Because when you get in some of these rooms, many of these rooms, and Dr. Stroman, I being the only Black man in several rooms that you actually were in the rooms that you knew that I had to step in when you weren't there were all kinds of people who literally ascribed on your Black body were people who are saying, you don't belong here. You don't have the intelligence. You offend me by you being here. You're taking somebody else's place in this room. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you don't succeed. Those things, they carry on. You're challenged with that well beyond when you get your PhD. When they give you that paper, that's just the very first hurdle of what you're going to have to go through. So part of this is you need to develop a very thick skin. You need to do, as several of our guests here have said, recognize that you are an expert in what you do. You know your subject better than anyone else. And so you can stand on the confidence, stand on the shoulders of other people who've helped pave the way before you get there, and recognize that, you know what, if you are good enough to get into a PhD program, you're good enough to get out of a PhD program, then don't ever let anyone else tear you down. And I think that those are the things. That's almost kind of like you put your shield on, you put your Black Panther suit on, right? That's what carries you through, because that's your armor that you know who you are, and never let anybody else take that away from you.
Well stated. Dr. Aleka and Dr. Smith.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really good question. What I'll say to this, to that question is, I love it. I'd rather you be afraid of me because of what's up here than be afraid of me because you think I'm a threat in other ways. So, I love the envy because I work for it. Other people get the same amount of accolades for doing much, much, much less. So I'll say I walk with it with pride.
Wow, you sound like an athlete getting ready to go to battle. I love it. Dr. Smith?
Yeah, for me, I like to take the approach of sort of slide into the room and use a stealthy approach. I don't wear my PhD on my sleeve, and I think it was Solomon who said that even the fool seems wise if he holds his tongue. And so I try to just be low key, and when people start talking about various things, that I will speak to those issues. And I enjoy watching the surprise on their faces when they say, "So where'd you get that? Where?" And it's just, and I do have my PhD, and I'm like, oh wow, really? And, I remember my wife saying, someone said, yeah, Robert's finishing his degree. Oh, what's he getting his bachelor's in? What is he getting his associates in, whatever, those kinds of things. And so I take that approach that um, I like to surprise people. So I don't wear the PhD on my sleeve, and I come in the room, and then when the situation presents itself, then I let folks know that I may not know everything, but as Dr. Turner and others have said, I am an expert on what I've researched and what I know, and I'm not afraid to share those things with you in a very non-confrontational, unassuming manner, but let you know that I do know what I'm talking about. So I love to watch the surprise on people's faces when they say, "Oh, you have a PhD, really?"
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about what you're doing. Dr. Cooper, what are your top, maybe one or two projects, activities, or research that you're currently working on?
Right now, I just finished a piece that looks at a legacy of African American resistance and activism through sport. So, I'm in sports sociology, but I read a lot of sport history, sport journalism, and different race topics. So, one of my biggest role models is Paul Robeson, and I started reading about him in undergrad, but really did not fully internalize what his legacy embodied until I started my doctoral studies. And then I also studied more about Dr. Harry Edwards and several individuals who were highly educated and also connected to sport. So I've just really become enamored with the process of learning how did we get to where we are today? The good, the bad. So that's a big thing that I'm working on, looking at different types of activism. So whether it's scholarly activism, legal activism, economic activism, media activism, and just looking at different ways in which we can use sport as a means of igniting positive change. So that's one of the things I'm working on now. And then another one is focusing on Black internationalism in sport. So living here in Boston has really expanded my understandings of the African diaspora. And I really am starting to read up and learn more about sport in international context.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Smith.
Currently, I'm working a number of things, but primarily Dr. Bryant Murphy, who's the Senior Dean of Leadership Development here at the School of Medicine, is endeavoring to sort of retool that program. So I'm spending some time with him, looking at how we can develop culturally competent leaders across the School of Medicine and then hopefully across the university at large. So I'm working on that. And currently, my PhD is in leadership skill acquisition with the focus in healthcare. So I studied a lot of leadership development programs, and I'm currently engaged in a leadership development program at my church, going through a program there in preparation to perhaps becoming an elder. It's a year-long program, so spending time in doing that. And then I have a lot of other interests that I want to get to at some point as well, but those are taking up the majority of my time right now.
Yes, and importance of the spiritual grounding. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Lecca and then Dr. Turner.
Yeah, so my day job as an analytical chemist at a biopharma company. So I work on, not to get super technical, but developing control strategies to produce materials that go into clinical trials. So that is my day job, but I'm also working on my passion is my STEM advocacy. I like to say that I exist at an intersection of social justice and chemistry. So I like to see more Black faces at the lab bench. I like to see more Black faces who are lab managers, who are supervisors. So I'm currently working on a project with the faculty at Cornell where we're actually trying to examine the experience of Black scientists who currently work in industry, across all industries in science, to really try to get to the root of why there's a lack of Black faculty getting into these industry positions and why they don't stay. So that's what I'm currently working on. I have a couple of things in the works for 2021. But my life goal is to turn the industry upside down, so that we can look at Black people as key contributors in healthcare.
And Well, for this conversation, as you know, Dr. Stroman, I do a lot of things, but for this conversation, I was awarded a KO1 and from the National Institute of Aging, a KO1 award, which is for career development and training. So I guess you could say, while I'm doing a full kind of slate of research projects, I'm also back in learning mode again. So this fellowship allows me to gain some expertise in neurocognitive science as well as Alzheimer's disease research. So I'm in a fellowship through Boston University where spending a lot of time doing a lot of reading and incorporating that into a brain health study that I'm working on outside of academia. Well, I'm also working with Dr. Stroman on creating the whole No Shortcuts initiative, where we're looking at positive brain health and behavior for athletes who both playing as well as moving on beyond the sports. And I was recently named the director of research for the NFL Alumni Association Health and Wellness Initiative. So those things keep me busy inside of academia as well outside of academia. And I'm also, the last thing I'm really focused on and excited about is I'm on the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Washington, D.C., where my main focus is to help raise money to keep the doors open for the thousands of kids that need support, particularly even now as COVID. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I want to put a plug for all of your local Boys and Girls Clubs across the country.
Well, thank you for that. And attendees, you can see how blessed I am to have such amazing men in my life and that I can call friends, but they are very, very open, very willing, very giving. So if you reach out to them on LinkedIn or just find their university or Bristol Myers, you can find these gentlemen, and I'm sure they will assist you. That is the heart. That is the heart that comes first with all this brilliance. So let's talk about the coronavirus, this pandemic. And I want to start off with Dr. Turner and Dr. Cooper. We're going to talk about it from the sport perspective. Now, there's a company called Tabit, and they are a provider of event payment data solutions. And they did a survey of 1,500 adults and found that only 27% are interested in attending a sporting event in the next 6 months. Now, if we broaden that out to about a year, they say it doubles. That number doubles. So what are your concerns? First off, for the sport industry, they're trying to figure out, how do we pay our bills? How do we keep sports alive, because so many Americans need sports to de-stress. And so we'll ask you first, the sport industry, and then we'll go into what are your concerns about athletes and coaches. Dr. Turner?
Well, I have, this is really Dr. Cooper's area, so I'll jump in a little bit. But in terms of the industry, one of the things that I have a great confidence in an American industry is their ingenuity and their ability to generate revenue. They will find a way. The NFL, the NBA, and everybody else, we don't have to worry about them. They will find a way to make money. There's no question about that. They'll do that. Where I'm more concerned is, in the NCAA and college sports and the world of amateur sports, Olympic sports, when the faucet turns off, the money stops flowing in those directions. There are a lot of young people who can't pursue their dreams. They've spent their time, as Dr. Cooper had talked about, dreaming about becoming the next Michael Jordan, watching television. We got commercials. I want to be like Mike. Well, what about, the people who want to be like Mike Phelps, who want to swim in the Olympics, and you have all of these programs in universities, they're cutting off money from there. That hypocrisy, I can go on for days, but I was just watching a 60-minute program where they were focusing on the universities that were cutting sports programs. Over 1,500 athletes basically had their dreams cut, right? And then they're saying, at the University of Minnesota, all of the cuts, they said they had $75 million shortfall. So they made all of these cuts in the sports program that amounted to about $1.5 million. Whereas their head football coach, I believe, is making about $4 million. So I'm trying to figure out how that works, where you can justify paying this one person, but yet if you made that cut in that person's salary, you'd be able to continue your quote unquote mission of investing in and developing into young people's lives. So it's really difficult for me, in my mind, to reconcile some of these issues around sports and play and other things. Now, when we talk about the health of athletes during Corona and all of those other things, those are things that have to come into the mix as well. But when it comes about what am I concerned about the viability and the future of sports altogether, I'm concerned that the universities are willing to sacrifice those who don't generate revenue in their programs and their hopes and dreams just to keep the spigot open for, the university writ large.
And I, just to echo what Dr. Turner mentioned, and just I'll answer the second part first and then the first part. But the second part, I hope that the holistic wellness of the athletes are prioritized more because of the pandemic. I'm one of those, probably not in popular opinion right now, that have significant concerns about any of the leagues playing right now. We don't know the long-term impacts of COVID. I know that they say a 10 to 14 day quarantine, but what does that mean after that time period? Can it still be transmitted? So as much as I love sports and I appreciate it, I actually would prefer that sports were halted until we had more information about what are the long-term implications. Now, I do think that the NBA and the WNBA model of creating a bubble and testing, I think that's probably the safest way that you can do it based on what we know. But outside of that, that is a concern of mine because as Dr. Turner's book talks about, sports are not for long. So what's going to happen after this is over? And for some college and high school athletes, if their seasons were suspended or canceled, that not for long is right now. Like they'll have to focus on what does life mean to me beyond now. In terms of the sport industry more broadly adapting, I think that it will evolve. And I think some of those changes should be positive, but I think all of us have to be, if you will, people who hold the industry accountable so that we don't just focus on getting back to the norm because the norm wasn't benefiting everybody equally. The norm was there's a significant underrepresentation of Black ownership in sports. The norm was across multiple sports, Blacks are not represented in multiple leadership positions. The norm was there are athletes who are being exploited on multiple levels. So I'm hoping that this is an opportunity for us as a society and as a sport industry to reevaluate, the structures that we have in place, why we're doing what we're doing, and what ways that we can be better in supporting not only athletes, but those connected to sport.
Dr. Turner, can you continue with your work in terms of athletes and mental health and safety? Tell us more about your work.
Sure. I think, again, Dr. Cooper talks about the health and well-being of athletes and the long-term impact of Corona particularly on the body. But, lots of people have forgetting about all of the pressures that athletes are having around the pandemic. We've had on our No Shortcuts show, we had Bucky Brooks, we had a number of different, former athletes, people who are coaching right now. And they were just talking about, for one, just the athletes prior to them being able to get back on the field on the high school level, talked about the isolation, the loneliness, the uncertainty of what's going to happen. I've been working all this hard to get a college scholarship, and then now I'm not being able to play. And then the halts and the starts and the stops. Those are the things. Even, Coach K came out yesterday and said, why are we playing? The mental health, the anxiety and the stress, athletes not being able to go and see their loved ones, their parents, not being able to travel to do that. We can, put athletes on planes to go play in a game, across the country, but we can't let them go see their families. All of these emotional issues, I think, anxiety and stress around that, not knowing what the future holds. We've been hearing this over and over again. And I'm afraid that, once the pandemic is over, we've not done a very good job in understanding what stress is like for athletes. on all levels, high school, college, and in the pros, and the mental health issues that go around there. We've not done a great job there. We're starting to see some people say, okay, we need to, for instance, need to make sure that there is a trained professional around available for college athletes and practices and all those other things. We still know that that's an inadequate model, but at least people are starting to move there. My concern is, as soon as things, quote unquote, get back to normal, what are we doing for outlets to listen to make sure that we support people in their mental health about what they experienced during the pandemic? These things are traumatic. These things manifest themselves in many different ways. And the irony that I have is that as a professor, and I'm teaching in my class, the university sends a very clear message to me that this is a really tough time for young people. If you see anything when you're doing your virtual classes, if you hear anything, make sure that the students are reinforced that they know that there are resources available for them. Their health, their mental health is paramount to us as a university. I'm telling you, I have a nephew that plays college football. I won't name the school, but he's telling me that they're not getting those same messages as the athletes. That the athletes, they're telling them, get back out there on that field, right? So that, again, I get really frustrated when I see that hypocrisy, that double standard that they have. Somehow or another, we just believe that these strong, athletic bodies, female and male, that they can deal with all of these things. They're superhuman, particularly when they're, people of color. They can just deal with it, but yet we have to coddle and really look after all of the quote unquote rest of the students. I say, we need to understand and listen to them and create an environment that, there is no penalty whatsoever that if they choose not to play. There is no penalty to say, I am afraid, I'm uncertain, I don't know what's going on. Can somebody give me answers? We just take that agency away from athletes, and that really, really concerns me in many instances. I'm not saying that all schools are like this, but I am saying that these young people sometimes, they don't know how to express themselves, and we've got to create an environment where they know that their mental health is paramount to us in society.
Well, thank you for that. And certainly, being in this space as an activist, I do know of athletes on the D1 level, Power 5, who have tried to use their voice, and it hurt them. It hurt their careers. It, having a scholarship taken away from them. So thank you for that. I'm also reminded of the hypocrisy. We have so many coaches and administrators at the college level who are saying that coming back to the university, where you have so many resources, nutrition, strength and conditioning, facilities, that it's better than their home environment. And so it's better for them to come to campus. And so on the surface, that sounds great. But my question is, how come we haven't heard from you prior to the coronavirus? How come you haven't been speaking up about the environments that they come from and how things are so bad, the systemic racism, the poverty, where the different systems, where everything around them is bad transportation, bad food system, bad housing. But the only time you raise your voice is if it matters to your sport and to your wins and losses. So that's the hypocrisy that I identify. Now, I'm not going to be disrespectful and not say Dr. Smith or Dr. Aleka if you have any conversation around sport, but do you have anything to add? Otherwise, we're going to talk about organizational culture. Any thoughts, comments around the sport matter?
No, I would just echo what Dr. Turner and Dr. Cooper have said. I think that our athletes are, I worry sometimes and that they are getting taken advantage of, and that it's the best interest of the organization is overshadowing their best interest. So I can only affirm what our panelists have said.
Yeah, I agree. It's like I sort of feel guilty, right? Because I love watching NCAA. I'm a big Michigan football fan. Well, not this year, but but I also recognize that what's going on, and just watching them play, there's no one in the crowds, and they can't be with their family. It puts me in a weird place. It's hard for me to enjoy college sports, especially this year.
Thank you. So let's talk about organizational culture. Now, even with the silver linings, the celebrations of milestones and achievements, births and transitions, no doubt 2020 has been very, very challenging for most Americans. And the workplace has a lot of smiles, a lot of smirks, a lot of sadness. And so Dr. Smith and Dr. Aleka, what key policy changes or benefits could help exhausted faculty, exhausted coworkers, employees, people of color? How can we navigate this pandemic? What are your thoughts? Dr. Aleka?
Oh,
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead, Dr. Smith.
Well, I'll jump in. I just recently joined an advisory committee to the chancellor, and here at UNC, and I also was recently appointed to or elected to the employee forum as a delegate there, and so representing the EHRA non-faculty here at UNC, that will be my constituency. I am taking forward to these committees, to these folks who are lending me their ear, what our folks are saying in the trenches at all levels. And so I think that those closest to the problem, or those who are being affected the most, will have the solutions. So I want to be the ear for those people and be the conduit to take it forward. And to acknowledge that, this COVID is affecting the people of color disproportionately than others because of the sectors, the strata in which they work. And to acknowledge that and to have applied policies, not just policies in theory, some well wishes of how we may make this happen, but let's just make sure that we're applying those policies, that we're doing it in such a way that it has impact upon those employees. And I think the best way is be presumptuous of us to say, oh, I know the answer, I have a solution for you. I think that's presumptuous. I think we need to go to the people, hear them out. How can we help you? And listen to them in meaningful conversations. And then my role is to take that to the chancellor and say, Kevin, this is what the people are saying they need. You asked me to join this committee for this purpose, and I want to fulfill that role. And so far, we've had one meeting so far, and I think the willingness to listen is there. And so my job is to go out and gather that information because people are weary. They really are growing weary, and the uncertainty is just exacerbating the stressors.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Smith. I think that's really important to really listen to the people on the front lines and the people who are really being affected first and hit the hardest. I think from an organizational standpoint, I believe that organizations, departments, and companies should really redefine what work-life balance means, right? In this virtual space, work life looks different for a lot of people. This year we're on thousands of Zoom meetings, and you can hear babies crying in the background, dogs barking. I think a lot of organizations should take that into account and not hold it against people who can't attend meetings or who can't do certain things that historically would advance their career. So I think definitely we need to redefine what work looks like. The typical 9 to 5, you come in, punch in, clock in, clock out, that may not exist anymore. So what does the future look like?
Dr. Cooper, Dr. Turner, your thoughts. How do we support one another, employees, co-workers, faculty in these very, very challenging times?
Yeah, I would just say I know it's kind of cliche, but I would just say kind of like 3 C's, and I say them in different spaces. But one, just be convicted about what's important to you and to your colleagues. Be courageous enough to speak up and to hold your organizations accountable. As Dr. Smith mentioned earlier, these organizations are focused on the bottom line, and whether it's frontline workers, whether it's essential workers, they want their bottom line to be met. It's incumbent upon us to be courageous about saying, hey, if you're going to put me in an unsafe circumstance, these are things that need to be taken into consideration. These are the realities that we're experiencing. And then the third C is just being committed to holding these organizations accountable and be committed to each other, family members, friends. Dr. Yelke mentioned earlier, with the imposter syndrome comment, but also helping us, it's okay to not be okay right now. If you're overwhelmed, if you're zoomed out, if you're stressed from unemployment, COVID tests, and family members who passed away, you don't have to act like like you feel bubbly and happy. It's a very challenging and trying time and a very unnerving time. So I would just say with the conviction, the courage, and the commitment, that applies to family members and coworkers, but also our collective efforts in holding these organizations accountable to providing the supports that many cases, they have the resources to do it. It's a matter of if they're willing to do it and if those who are working for them demand that they do it.
You know, and thinking about this question, I was listening to everyone, I realized that for me personally, I find myself in somewhat of a unique situation. I'm faculty in a medical school and in a hospital as well. And you know, so I think where many people around the country are just inundated with misinformation. They don't know what is real and what is fake when it comes to coronavirus. Whereas, you know, where we are, we're actually doing a lot of research about this. We have a lot of resources. Dr. Fauci speaks to our faculty once a month, if not more. We have the physician who's Joe Biden's physician is on our faculty. So we get a lot of the information about the science of this and about, you know, what's necessary to protect folks in their lives. And I think we have a lot of faculty because of that are able to speak up. They have the agency to speak up about what are their concerns and force the administration to listen to them. And we happen to be in Washington, D.C. too. So there's a lot of high profile around that. So I would say in our instance, I feel very fortunate that we are given the information that we need and that we're given the support and people are listening to us for lots of different reasons. So I feel fortunate about that. I think one of the things I would say though, is that agency is really important, is that, you know, when you have concerns, you have to speak up. You have to force people to listen to what you have to say. And that's easier for some people than it is for others. So that's a real challenge in any workspace, right? But self-advocacy is a real important part of all of this. Now, Dr. Stroman, you had talked about, you know, in athletes, when there's an imbalance of power and people don't feel as though if they speak up that they'll be protected and valued, it could jeopardize their position. That's a really tough situation. So I think if anything, I'm really concerned with those folks outside of my organization that feel as though they're vulnerable, they're confused, they don't have information properly, and they, you know, are kind of being tossed to and fro and by the whims of other people who are not speaking, who they don't feel that they can voice themselves, you know, properly. Those are the things that I'm really concerned about.
And so, as it's been said, we're in two pandemics. We have the COVID-19, and then we have COVID-16-19, talking about the racial matters. And so what are your thoughts in terms of what your organizations, whether it's the academy, whether it's your university, whether it's your employer, what are your thoughts in terms of actions taken or not taken? Let's start off with Dr. Smith. And especially since, you know, you've now joined, you know, our senior most committee to address this. What are your thoughts about and I won't even necessarily pinpoint UNC, but all of R1 higher education institutions, major R1 universities?
Yeah, I would say that I have been extremely pleased and impressed with what UNC has done in terms of the research on this area. And as Dr. Turner spoke about, we have the benefit of being in an environment where people are knowledgeable about the science of COVID and how it affects people. And the UNC Health actually sent a bus out to do testing within the community and those kinds of things. So I think that there needs to be more of that, and how we can push that forward institutionally. And as I say, I think that, you know, all of us are leaders within our sphere. And so what I'm going to endeavor to do is to influence those who are around me and help them to understand the necessity of doing basic things. And one of the things I haven't shared with one of my past experiences, I practiced as a respiratory therapist. And now we're hearing a lot about respiratory therapy in the vernacular of the country, because those are the people who are managing the advanced life support systems of patients who are on COVID. And so I was telling my family and friends a long time ago, like March and April, wear a mask, because I'm concerned that the transmission of this virus is it's more than just droplet. It is, I think it's airborne. And so I'm endeavoring to educate people within my sphere, within the UNC system, and then work within the UNC system, educate people outside the system. We have 13 to 14 hospitals within our system, a broad swath of people. And so whatever I can leverage those resources to help educate the masses, that's what I'm doing. So I think organizationally, I've been really impressed with what's happening here. Some of the tests has been developed by some of the researchers that were ahead of the game. And I just want to encourage those who are doing things really, really well to continue that, and also those who are not, to encourage them to step up and do more as well.
Dr. Lecca?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we did see this year is a lot of organizations coming out with very broad statements about around social justice, how they, they respect their Black employees and they're going to do everything they can for those Black employees. For me, I like to see actionable items. So, I mean, I don't work for every organization, so I don't know what they're doing behind closed doors, but definitely would like to, if an organization really respects and wants to do a lot in terms of equity for Black employees, and their board of directors are all white, or their C-suite is all white, what are they really doing, right? We can talk about their recruiting practices. We can talk about from the early career all the way up to the CEO. What are they really doing for their Black employees? I think those these statements are really good. They're they're a good start. But I think as employees at all levels, I think we definitely need to challenge our managers and our management and our directors really to do more for their Black employees, not only within the company, but in their communities. Because I know a lot of these big companies are based in communities that are very diverse. For example, my company is in Central Jersey, and around in the Central Jersey area, it's a very diverse community. So I look to see what our company, my department, is doing to really interact with the community as well.
Thank you. Dr. Cooper and Dr. Turner.
Well, UMass Boston, our new chancellor, Marcelo Suarez Orozco, has in his first 100 days taken some notable steps that I think are in the right direction. One, he and his wife established a George Floyd honorary scholarship to help students who are in financial need. And the way that it's written, I believe that it will attract a larger number of Black students to pursue and apply for that. So just echoing Dr. Smith and Dr. Lecca, the comments around, where you put your money in your budget is where your priorities and your values are. So I think that's one step. Another thing that he's done, he created a special assistant to the Chancellor for Black Life role that I'm currently in right now. And this is separate from the Chief Diversity Officer, which I thought was a bold step. We talk about Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. And many people think that the diversity, equity, and inclusion trend is improving conditions for Black people, but in many cases it's not. And so I thought it was very courageous of the chancellor to create a position specifically to focus on issues impacting Black faculty, staff, and students. And then he also just recently established a Restorative Justice Commission, which will bring together a range of people on campus to focus on restorative justice practices at the university. So I think that that's beneficial. In terms of 5 core areas that I would recommend all institutions do a self-evaluation on continuously is the structural arrangements that Dr. Ielka mentioned, who's represented and where, who's involved in the power decision makings. So structure. Number 2, climate. What is the climate for different groups and how do you assess that and respond in a timely manner? Number 3, resources. Where are your resources allocated and what are the results as a result of those resource allocations? Number 4, community engagement. So, with the surrounding community and with communities in the most need. And then number 5, historical recognition and reconciliation. So those are the 5 areas that here at UMass Boston that we're trying to use as a framework to guide efforts moving forward.
Well, that is definitely a powerful, powerful statement to your chancellor and to your leadership, especially to parse out the Black experience and separate from general diversity. So thank you for sharing that. Dr. Turner?
I'm going to keep it short because Dr. Cooper said so many things as well as so many other people on the panel. But I just think, really it comes down to first and foremost, just follow the money. Where you spend your money is where your values are, right? So I want to know, really not token money, but to the pain point. Where are the values that you have is what you're going to invest in. And that's what I really want to see.
Well, you all look great, you sound great, and you move with confidence and courage. So I want to ask each one of you, how do you navigate all the pressures, whether it comes from family, from mentees, from workload, role modeling, your own personal goals? What's your secret sauce? How are you keeping it together? Dr. Leka, how about if you start us off?
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing to the previous question about following the money. I also think there's a big difference between investment and just donating money. I know a lot of companies are, committed to donating hundreds of millions, but what is that really doing for the Black community? So I do encourage organizations not only to give, to give money, but actually interact with the that group that they're giving the money to. Sorry, I just wanted to add that, just came to my mind. But in terms of a secret sauce, what do I do to navigate the pressures? I take breaks. No one's really been traveling this year or shouldn't be traveling this year. But during the day, I find time to take breaks, mental breaks, physical breaks, get up, walk around. Zoom has been good to really reconnect with, a lot of my family lives overseas, so I can reconnect with them. I'm sort of a nerd, so I watch a lot of cartoons, so that keeps me really, really grounded. But I think it's really important to find that time for yourself because your universities, your jobs, it's going to put the stress on you. So just finding a time to really exhale is really important for me, and I try to do it every single day.
Thank you. Dr. Smith?
Thank you. Many, many years ago, I read a book written by a gentleman named Richard Swenson called Margin. And the book talked about maintaining margin in your life and how you do that in a balanced approach, work-life balances, those kinds of things. So for me, I have to be very deliberate in setting aside time to rest. I didn't play sports collegiately. I certainly played in high school. And as I've gotten older, I used to race bikes. And so I don't race anymore, but I used to race bicycles. And so I do a lot of riding, and that provides me with a great margin. It's easy on the body, and I do have one that has a motor as well, but I don't ride that as much as I ride the one that I pedal. So for me, it's doing those kinds of things, and to have to be very deliberate about it. Just like you schedule time for meetings and for presentations, for all those kinds of things, you must schedule time for yourself and be deliberate about it. And that's what the book that I read it decades ago, and I remember those principles in that book is setting aside time to maintain that margin.
I didn't know you had a e-bike. I have one as well, so we're going to have to connect for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have one with a motor and one that I pedal. So
yes. Dr. Turner, Dr. Cooper, secret sauce.
Okay, well, a couple things. One is the spiritual part of my life is hugely important to me, right? Making sure that I stay grounded and rooted in that and understanding that, all my blessings come from heaven above, God above, right? So that balance is like, without that, I'd be really nothing. And I think another important part for me is to try to remember to always practice what I preach. I'm a health and medical scientist, right? And I really care about, in particular, the health of Black men. So I need to make sure that I am, not one of these negative statistics to the best of my ability. I need to be able to show in practice what it is that I'm really trying to encourage all my other brothers to do. And that's to take care of myself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that kind of thing. And I just want to, if you'll allow me, I want to take a real quick second to divert from this. There was an attendee that wrote about my hope for the vaccine, especially for the African American community. I mean, part of what I do is I do social and behavioral medical research, and I think one of the very big challenges that we have going forward, especially with all this information and distrust historically in the medical community for people of color, is how are we going to convey messages to them about these vaccines, about protecting themselves. Like Dr. Cooper said about the long-term impact. I think the very first thing that we need to do is shift the paradigm and start listening to people. Instead of disseminating information, we need to understand what are important values to people, understand all of what they know, answer all the questions, and remember that we at George Washington University and all other universities that practice health and medical, we are part of the community. Even if you don't look like those other folks, you need to be out there and hear what they say and understand what their needs are, and to be committed long-term to the community's health. And I think that that's one of the things that I'm really concerned about. How do we get the messaging? How do we develop messaging? Don't just tell people what they need to do, but make sure that people understand what's at risk around this vaccine and the virus, and how can we work collectively to make our community stronger, healthier, and safer. So I just wanted to add that to this.
No, thank you. I'm going to come back to some of these questions in the Q&A. So Dr. Cooper, if you can go ahead and tell us your secret sauce, and we're going to come back to those Q&As.
Yeah, I'll be real brief. Similar to Dr. Turner's spirituality, I try to keep my spiritual routine and nourishment. Number two, times that I'm just not okay, and I just sit with it for that moment, and I don't allow it to extend to like a depressive state or to where it impedes my progress. But I tell myself and I tell my wife that it's okay. We've been in the house 9 months, and this is difficult. We've got 2 daughters, so I mean, I just allow myself to just know that I'm not in a quote unquote normal routine, and that's okay. I try to exercise, outside and in safe environments. I watch YouTube videos. For me, watching stimulating intellectual work is relaxing to me. So I was just listening to a CRL James interview that he did back in 1970. And I don't know, it just helps me relax. And then, to Dr. Smith's point about the margin, I have a 2-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old daughter, and there's just times where I just disconnect. I hear my phone go off with the emails, and I just disconnect, and I just play with my daughters, and I spend time with my wife, and just say I'll get to it later. So that's how I try my best to cope.
Thank you. We talk about time management, but you really can't manage time. You have to manage yourself and set priorities. And so we're going to do a quick whip around as we're closing out, and want to get your thoughts on some of these questions that have been answered within the Q&A box. And so I want to start off with the thought around going right from your undergraduate degree to your master's to your PhD versus taking some time to work and get some more experience. And so if we could do just a quick whip around and let the audience know whether or not you took a break or you just went from one to another to the next degree. Dr. Smith, what was your path?
My progression was, I'm going to date myself, but bachelor's degree in 83, master's in 94, PhD in 2003. So I was working, only time I did not work was my undergrad. And then beyond that, work sort of channeled my work with my studies and try to gear those things and have them to come together in some fashion. So.
Okay, Dr. Lecca, thank you.
Oh yeah, so I went right through from undergrad straight to my PhD. Looking back at it, I probably would have took a year or 2 off just to get work experience and really figure out exactly what I wanted to do. It would have made the beginning of my PhD easier to navigate, maybe.
Thank you. Dr. Turner?
Yeah, so mine again, really circular route. I took 18 years between the time I graduated then I enrolled into graduate school. So I don't advise anyone to take that much time off. I actually wish that I would have gone back up to school about 10 years earlier. And one of my prayers is that God will allow me to be physically and mentally, emotionally strong enough to remain in this industry for another 25 years, because I really love what I do. But I would really encourage young people to take a little time off, have some experiences outside of scholarship. And you can bring that into to your research and your graduate school experience. It'll help enrich it, I believe.
Dr. Cooper?
I took a year off after undergrad before going back to do my master's, and then another year off after my master's to go back and do my PhD. Just to put it concisely, just be in tune with yourself. If you're ready for that, as Dr. Stroman mentioned earlier, graduate school, it can be an arduous process. So for everybody, it's going to look different. I agree with Dr. Turner that having work experience outside of the academy can be beneficial. But ultimately, do your research on the programs. If funding's available, make sure you're working with an advisor who can be supportive of your work. Also just think about your long-term plans for yourself in terms of your trajectory. So that was my journey.
How about family pressures, being the first one to obtain a PhD in your family? How about if we start with, we'll go around again, if you could share whether or not you were first and if you experienced any type of family pressures to succeed. How about if we start with Dr. Smith again?
I definitely was a first with a PhD, but there were no family pressures. I said before, my mom always told me that you can be anything you want to be if you work hard at it. So it was just a very supportive environment for me. No pressure at all. I was going to be loved no matter what, success or failure. I was going to be loved and just do my best and pursue it that way.
Wonderful. Dr. Leka?
Yeah, I was also the first with a PhD in my family. Also probably the first to get a science degree. I'm not sure. I have to fact check that one. But similar to Dr. Smith saying, I remember one day I was having a really rough time during my PhD and I called my mom. She said, take the weekend off, come back home. And she said, and I was thinking about quitting at that point. I think I was 2 or 3 years in. And she said, listen, if you quit, if you stay, you're still my son. So that gave me enough energy to go on and finish.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Turner?
I was definitely the first. And, one of the things I do want to say is that there was no pressure, not at all, from my family. Probably the biggest challenge was explaining to my parents and my family what it is that I actually do. I still don't think that in a lot of respects my family knew what I did until I was on that HBO, documentary. And my brother called me and said, "Hey, you're on television." I said, "Yeah, I've been trying to tell you this for a while." So that's all. But I don't think that that's a unique challenge. I think there's a lot of us who have that kind of challenge. But what I want to say is that I want people to recognize that PhD isn't for everyone. And if you don't obtain a PhD, it is not the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. It's not for everybody. It's a research degree. Not everyone actually even needs a PhD. So, whatever it is that your passions are that you want to pursue, do those to the best of your ability. And don't just look at someone and say, well, they have a doctor's degree and I just have a master's or a bachelor. No, it's not about that at all. It's really about, being the best you that you can be.
Wonderful, wonderful message. Dr. Cooper?
I typed mine in the chat, so I'll save the time. I wasn't the first in my family, and similar to what Dr. Smith and Dr. Turner mentioned, I've got family members that some know and understand what my PhD represents and they applaud it and they're happy about it. I've got other family members who could care less. They're just like, hey, as long as you're paying your bills and taking care of yourself, I don't care what you're doing. So, and I appreciate that because it keeps me level. Like they don't care. Like they don't know me as Dr. Cooper. They appreciate that that's what I do, but that's not how they identify me. So no, I didn't have that pressure.
So what are you all listening to? What are you watching on TV? Any particular podcasts? You want to go ahead and share some of your gems or pearls that feed your soul? Dr. Smith.
Well, similar to Dr. Cooper, I find myself doing a lot of YouTube on, crazy things like how clutches in cars work and Dr. Pimple Popper. I mean, I'm sorry. Those are things that I've been watching because I'm so much into the books and reading those kinds of things at work and certain other endeavors. So I just do those things for this mindless fun.
It's a good way to escape. Dr. Lecca.
Yeah, I have to echo that too. I find myself every time I open up YouTube, my suggested videos is all Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think in my next life, or maybe in my past life, I was an astronaut of some sort. But I'm really looking forward to picking up A Promised Land, the Barack Obama book. I think that's going to be the next book I pick up.
Thank you. Dr. Turner, Dr. Cooper?
Yeah, I'm a big, I love gospel music and I love house music. And so I just found this fusion of gospel house. So I'm like on it all day long. I'm listening, typing, doing my work on that. It gets me up. So I'm hyped on that. I am really, Dr. Cooper had me thinking, now I got to go on YouTube and find that CRL James interview. I'm hyped about that. And then I just, what I did for real, I spent a couple weeks down in Miami. So I was really getting into kind of doing my work. And then Buddy has a boat and we just go sit out on the water and kind of just enjoy the beautiful scenery in the Biscayne Bay. So that's kind of helped me recharge a little bit for this next level of work I got to do.
Well, you're gonna have to send me that playlist. That's definitely a good combo, gospel house. Dr. Cooper.
So I've been listening a lot to, as a colleague of ours at Morgan State University, Jared Ball. He's got a podcast called I Mix What I Like, and he interviews a range of intellectuals and people from all backgrounds and very just fascinating topics. So listen to him. Shameless plug. I'm reading a book from a colleague of ours, Siri McDougall, Black Men's Studies. He's a professor of Africana Studies at I think California State, Los Angeles. Siri McDougall the third. Really enjoying his book. It's just a comprehensive book about Black men and issues in that regard. So that's and then, like I said, CRL James is on repeat right now. But he's got some great videos on YouTube. So yeah, those are what I'm listening to and right now. And I took a break from, but I want to get back to finish reading Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Really good book. I just, with the semester, I got a little distracted, but I'm going to get back to that.
Well, thank you for sharing those. Definitely some classics that we can all go back to. And then there are some things that we need to do just to escape, because it's been a heavy year, but a beautiful year as well. Again, so many things to celebrate this year as well. And I'll put in that shameless plug for my podcast, If You Only Knew, and just interviewing lots of wonderful, wonderful people all across the country, across the world in their journey. So to close us out, let's just go around and talk about your next. What are one or two things that you want to do in the next 5 years that you're not working on now? What are those things, maybe that pebble in your shoe that you've been meaning to go ahead and attack and take care of and complete? So what's on your plate? Let's start off with you, Dr. Cooper.
I think for me, just something that I'm not working on currently, I would just say, because I'll be transitioning to another age range in my life over the next 5 years. That I'm not doing right now. I guess on a personal front, just make sure I'm staying connected to some family members who maybe I haven't spoken to in a while, and we don't live as close to each other as we did. So as I get older, I want to make sure that I'm not only close to them, but my children know who they are, while they're still alive. In terms of professionally, I guess I would just like to be a part of just mass organization or grassroots efforts around connecting some of our siloed work. Even just being on this panel it inspires me so much. And I know, Dr. Stroman, you're the mastermind with these things, but just thinking about how we can work together, just to enhance the synergy across different areas. So that would be kind of my dream.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Turner?
Yeah, there's two, and I'll say them real quick, two projects that I think I really love to be able to do within the next 5 years. One, academically, I was involved with this, again, the movie Student Athlete by HBO Films, LeBron James. I would love to, and trying to figure out, I want to do another film. I want to do a documentary of sorts about women's sports, particularly African-American women's sports, but all women in sports and the pressures around sports and mental health and all of those other things. I'm hoping that we can talk about that and give voice to women, because I think we've done a great misjustice in not hearing their voices. So I really want to be able to do that. And then the other thing is I'm a real big Property Brothers fan. So HDTV, so closeted one day, I hope that I'll be able to take on a project like, do a house, fix it up, sell it, that whole thing. So I hope that I'll, be able to do that someday.
Excellent. Dr. Smith and Dr. Aleka.
On the personal level, I'd like to continue my pursuits. I love flying helicopters. It's one of those things that I haven't done in a while, but I want to get back to that. And of course, with COVID, it's kind of difficult because you're sitting pretty close to the instructor. But I want to do that sort of personal fun level. And academically, I want to go back and do some additional research from my PhD, looking at stratification of leadership development across cultures and how that happens. So those are two things I want to get back to.
Thank you. Dr. Aleka?
Yeah, so in a personal standpoint, I want to write a comic book. I want to create a Black superhero in a kind of like a Black chemist. I want to create me in a superhero, basically. So that's something I've always thought about. So I can't draw, so I have to connect with artists, but I have this story in my head. And professionally, I want to do more. I know I work in industry, but I want to continue doing more academic work, shining light on Black scientists, particularly Black chemists.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for this time. I mean, really a very, very special time. I think we need to do it again. Continued success to all of you. And again, I want to thank the Center of Sport Business and Analytics. I want to thank Gillings, the School of Global Public Health, Dean Reimer, and Dr. Colleen Cipriani. I want to thank everyone who made this possible. Next week, I'm going to have another conversation with two women academics in sport business. I'm going to be talking to Dr. Lori Martin at Louisiana State University and Dr. Ellen Starosky at Ithaca. And so I will be in touch. I will put out all of the information, but it's next Tuesday at 6 o'clock in the evening. And so again, happy holiday season to everyone. Continue to spread joy. Thank you again for joining in.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stroman.
Thank you.